hands down, the worst moments in business, the most awful contracts, the ones that go least to plan, cost us the most money, have absolutely taught me the most. What is standing before you that most likely is, I'm gonna ad lib here, absolutely terrifying, makes you want to vomit, has you wanting to quit, run, and bow out, is 100% designed by the divine or by life. I don't know. By your mere existence. It is designed to release what is within you. If we're not here for each other, why are we here then? I'm pretty sure my car didn't want to just be driven. It's a thing. Yeah. It doesn't have a heartbeat. And so when I detached from that connectivity to material objects, to stuff, to success, to reputation, it just became about making relationships and the heartbeats. And I must thank my son for that. I don't know if I would have hit the level of the crossroad that I'm at now had I not had him. There's just, I think, more good in the world than bad. And they're everywhere. If you ask and you humble yourself to be imperfect and say, I need help, they help you. The bank, the attorneys, the accountants, everybody. I have a wonderful team. I love it.
Hello, I'm Alyssa, and today I'm sitting in for Andy Golding, and I'm very excited about today's episode of the Toledo Works podcast. In this podcast, we speak with business owners to uncover their stories of success, struggles, and achievements. This podcast is sponsored by Kripke Enterprises. At Kripke, recycling metal is not just good for the environment, it's good for business. This podcast is produced by Stewart Media Strategy, and today I am thrilled to introduce to you all Miss Priscilla Bersée.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Priscilla, just briefly, what are you into now? What are you doing?
Well, Castle Hill Associates is the name of our company, and we are a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business located in Waterville, Ohio, based out of Waterville. We're also woman-owned, and I happen to be the woman and the service-disabled veteran. So,
well, hot dog.
Yes, but I have a wonderful team of experts, and I'm grateful to the partnerships that we have and my business partners as well. And so we started in 2016.
Okay.
And our work encompasses really coast to coast. We're federal contractors primarily, but we also service local clients and local businesses. And so I'd say we're a coast to coast small business that, still helps the local schools and whatever else we can do to help out.
Gotcha.
So, and I guess I should probably clarify that what we do is asbestos and lead surveys. We're industrial hygienists.
Okay.
So we test, asbestos, lead, hazmat, radon, mold, etc.
All right. So did you know at 6 years old, this is what you were going to do with the rest of your life? Be a business owner and all that?
I actually wanted to own a business. I really wanted to have I envisioned myself as a shopkeeper with a transactional. And then after that, I really enjoyed watching the bank tellers do their thing, and I said I wanted to be a banker, and I had all these ideas of basically I would cherry pick the particular tasks that interested me. Now I have family members who knew from day one they wanted to be a teacher, they wanted to be a doctor, and I have often said that if that type of a career is like building a wedding cake, where layer by layer you work towards excellence in one category. I was more of a bake sale where, and I mean that in the best possible way. I mean, who brings their not great recipe to a bake sale? You bring your best, but there's variety, and you get to experience all difference. And so, no, I didn't know this is where I would end up, but I think all signs were pointing me here, and I ended up here eventually, and I'm really grateful for it, and I love what we're doing, and I love being part of Castle Hill and working with my partners. Although it did not start that way.
Right.
It originated with a college-bound path that I thought I'd be an engineer and carry on that way. Eventually, I thought maybe environmental engineer and do marine biology.
Okay. Now, what was your first job out of high school?
Well, the first job, in high school. I was a waitress, and I cleaned houses, and I was a babysitter. Did a lot of that. I also cleaned up yards for everyone. I was a bit of an entrepreneur trying to fit all of these different jobs around an athletic schedule, a rigorous academic schedule. And so it was no shock for me then when I entered the college path and needed to fill in the blanks. If I may back up, college for me was actually my second choice.
Okay.
My first choice was to join the Army.
Gotcha.
And so I had a path where I was going to join the Army, and then I got kind of moved into a different direction of going college bound, and it ended up what I did. It just wasn't the path or the direction or the timeline that I followed. And after my freshman year of college, due to a bunch of circumstances with scholarships and finances, I decided to kind of regroup and go back to Plan A. And I joined the Army Reserve. And at which point I came home and I said to my father, he was a big inspiration in a lot of the things I did. He was always my cheerleader and always, cheering me on in sports, cheering me on in school. And our family was very supportive. But my dad particularly was who I would bounce ideas off of. And I said, how would you feel if I joined the Army? And he leaned on the table and he said, when did you sign up?
He knew.
Yeah, I go, how'd you know that? He goes, because you never bring ideas to us for our input. You tell us after. And I kind of had that independent streak of finding something I wanted to do and then doing it and then telling everyone about it, making sure, I was certain about it. But no, I joined the Army Reserve, loved it. Within about a year, 9/11 happened, though. And so me dipping my toe in as a reservist and going back to college and pursuing all of my ideas, it shifted. And I ended up mobilized at Fort Drum, New York, and spent 5 years there, on majority of it on active duty, and learned a whole new set of skills along the way.
Gotcha.
Decided I wanted to be a firefighter paramedic here in Waterville. And so I was kind of three-way. I was a reservist, firefighter, paramedic, and college student.
Wow.
But active duty
so you
kind of collided all of that. Yeah, so that's why I wasn't kidding about the bake sale.
Yeah, and it sounds like even from like an early age with your, even before high school, during high school, you've been very driven and self-motivated.
Well, I wanted to be a good employee.
Mm-hmm.
I really strove to please whoever I worked for. I wanted to work really hard. I enjoyed having a supervisor that mentored me or showed me things, but I tended to, and this was actually advice from my father. I'd come home from various jobs and he'd ask if I got fired yet.
Why?
I thought,
why is
from
that?
my biggest cheerleader, why would you think that I got fired? And he said, well, because you're an entrepreneur. And sometimes in business, there isn't a place for the person with the fresh ideas. And in the various jobs I had, maybe weren't ready for the efficiencies or the ideas I might have brought. But I didn't have all the right answers. I just had a lot of ideas. And so growing up through that, growing into those professions and learning, I think the Army helped a lot, that sometimes if you have an idea, it isn't always the right time to express it. And you have to use, prudence, and you have to consult with the right people offline. And anyway, that wisdom I gleaned over time, and I'm really grateful to the leadership in the military for guiding me through that, from the, ambitious, zealous, young employee into someone that showed a little bit more temperance and wisdom at when and to whom I blurted out my bright ideas.
I get that. So I guess, what was your experience in the Army? Was it positive? It was.
Good. I don't know if the Army is for everyone, but I loved it.
Okay.
For me, again, I said it was plan A.
Yeah.
When everything went sideways as a civilian, I can say that now. I went to the Army and I loved it. I really did. I actually aspired to go active duty. 9/11 meant I didn't have to make a change to my contract. And unfortunately, right when I got mobilized was right when I was graduating with my paramedics license or intermediate license in New York State. And didn't get to use it, but then got hurt on active duty. I injured more of like an athletic injury on active duty, and never actually got to go onward to the next career path. And so, meaning when I was off active duty, I didn't get to go work as a paramedic. I wasn't able to, couldn't lift the patients, couldn't be reliable in a fire, et cetera. And so I had to find something brand new. When I came off active duty at 27 years old, that what am I good at? And the Army had been using me for logistics and operations and chart keeping and tracking people and human resources. And I was really grateful to have landed a job back home.
Yeah.
And start that civilian side of the career. I was still a reservist, and Eventually, the injury caught up with me, and they medically retired me out.
Gotcha. How much of your, I guess, entrepreneurial skill set and, like the intangibles, the ability to work with different sorts of people, obviously your communication, organization, all that stuff, how much of that do you think you learned, I guess, in the Army?
Oh, a great amount. A lot of it, you come with your own superpowers.
Right.
Everyone's got their own gifts. And then you meet people. And what I loved is that the Army allowed me to see a vast array of people all at once. And I was able to kind of cherry pick what particular skills were ideal. And there was a young lady who had grown up in Eastern Europe. She spoke 7 languages. She was an Army reservist with me. She taught me everything I know about computers. She was brilliant, and she was willing to teach me. My sergeant major at Fort Drum taught me a hard lesson about leadership. And if I may tell the story, there was a day I was in his office, and to any soldier out there who remembers this day, you were right and I was wrong. I was upset, and I believed that my precision in the data points was superior to my subordinates, and I was frustrated that they didn't care about the data points as much as I did. And they had this, not necessarily, there was no uprising, there was no rebellion, but it was certainly slight insubordination and definitely disrespect. And I went to my command sergeant major, and I told him what I felt. And he said, I bet you have to tell them that you're in charge every single day. And I said, yes, I thought he was rallying me. Like, I thought he was cheerleading me. I go, yes, I do. How did you know? Well, wiser than me, and certainly trying to teach me a lesson, he said, if you have to tell them, then you aren't. Maybe the problem is with you. And that was a gut check reset. And so I won't say that I was the best soldier. I'm just saying I evolved into somebody that I'm happier being now than when I started.
So how did that interaction, I guess, change you and the way that you dealt with your subordinates and the way that you interacted with
peers,
employees,
or superiors,
peers,
everyone.
everybody? Yeah.
It was humbling, and I realized that though I was getting, maybe I was the student mindset where you get your straight A's and you carry yourself through your degree plan and you get yourself through high school, and it didn't fit in the real world. You have to be cooperative. You have to be collaborative. You can't be a bully. You can't be a jerk. You have to find that middle ground where you respect others as human beings and do not see their differences as shortcomings. Their differences are your strengths. I think it was Carnegie who specifically hired people who were excellent at exactly what he wasn't excellent at. And whether you liked Carnegie or not, I agree with the premise.
Yeah.
And so what I think it helped me do was to, again, imperfectly and with many setbacks and many fallbacks, become a leader that people wanted to be with, and also be a subordinate people wanted to work with, a peer that people wanted to be around, and to be effective. They say leadership is, they say, like, to be a boss, to be a manager is a title. To be a leader is to influence change. And that's what I began to aspire towards. And again, the civilian jobs and moving around in different positions, I'm just grateful that over in my civilian jobs, I worked at Lucas County, they saw that I was eager to get involved in projects and maybe leave the desk a little bit. And it began the project management career. And they trusted me with more and more and more. And I ended up, that was my segue into facilities and my segue into project management, which gave me the courage and the know-how in a microcosm of ways, like a small amount compared to what I thought was a lot at the time, and what I've since become more wise to realize was a very small amount of wisdom for doing what we do now.
Gotcha. Now, you touch on something that, people aren't always going to be easy to deal with. Some people are more difficult to deal with. Some people are bullies. Some people are whatever.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for business owners or entrepreneurs out there when they are faced with these people and they need to figure out how to make it work?
Well,
Is there a way?
Well, I actually experienced success so one of the county roles that I had was, because of my military experience, I was eligible to be the supervisor of security.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found worked for me, because I'm 5'2". I was never like the soldier that was going to save the world. I was more or less, used for my ability to make charts and track data and whatnot. So as head of security, I was going to be face to face with people who were having their worst day. And that's what I called it. I never said they were. There was a term we'd have to use for like an irate client or an aggressive situation. But to me, it was like, this is this person's worst day.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it meeting them where they are? Yes,
it was being authentically sincere. And this is actually something I learned bedside. I remember, I say bedside in the rig as a paramedic. And again, most of my time as a paramedic was training, but or they call them clinicals, but you're working alongside full running crews.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my proudest moments as a paramedic was the day that somebody who otherwise felt threatened and had attempted a lethal dose of medicine intentionally broke down their walls, and by me communicating with them, by me just treating them with respect and being a human side by side with them, and I was the one that just had that seat in the rig, they told us what they took. This person who otherwise did not want to be saved felt humanized and felt seen, and I hopefully felt heard enough to trust at least me with the intel that I needed to relay to the team so that we could try to create an anecdote to try to prevent, terminal.
Yeah.
We didn't want to lose our patient. And it wasn't my brilliance on narcotics. It wasn't my brilliance on understanding the dosage. It was just being another person present with another person. And so in business, what I have found, there are people who can follow a script and give those elevator speeches and they know and they nail it. I am awful. I am so unnatural and awful at that. And I just dropped the mask and everything really started to click for me in business when I started just doing it my way. And yes, I'm going to talk about your children and I'm going to ask you questions and I'm going to compliment your glasses and I'll know everything about your life. I might have forgotten your name. And maybe at the end of it, we'll say, oh, by the way, what do you do? What's your business about? How maybe we could help each other.
Relationships.
Yeah. And for me, that's what works for me. So the authentic self, that's not the rendition of authentic self for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Their version might look different. It might take shape differently. But in my case, the nurturer, the fixer, the helper, I've said in the past, my role in the Army was similar and akin to Radar O'Reilly from MASH, where he just kind of like dives in and he gets to be like the silent hero and then, dive back out and not really be the focus, but to be a helper. And I've always been a helper. I think that's why I felt called to do the fire. Now, a life event occurred and I felt drawn to be a firefighter paramedic. While I was away with basic training in AIT, I got training in it. It was really it was closing a loop. It was closing filling a void that I knew I needed from an experience I had in high school where a classmate of mine, actually two classmates of mine, experienced a rollover car accident. Oh, wow. And I was the first car that pulled up on them on the drive home. And my experience from that had left me with a deficit feeling, like I wasn't helping. I didn't know enough. I didn't know how to help them. And so sort of my atonement for that was to join in the day one, actually. I came home February 14th of 2001 to Waterville from AIT, basic training. And on February 15th, I walked in at 9 a.m. to the Waterville Fire Department and signed up.
Gotcha.
And that was the phenomenal irony of that, if not irony, if not fate. As I told my story in the dispatch of why I was coming back and who the children were, a gentleman on the outside of the hallway who was still finishing up the electrical. Waterville was just building their new station. He pulled me aside and thanked me for what I was doing. And I said, I'm barely a soldier. I'm not a firefighter paramedic. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're thanking me for. And he said, no, thank you for what you're doing for Jason. He was the driver of the car that had rolled, and he was one of the two students who passed away that night. Oh. And I said, I'm sorry. Should I know you? I'm sorry. It's all a blur right now. And maybe you knew my parents. Or he goes, no, I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing for Jason. I'm his father.
Oh, wow.
And he heard that day. And so I don't think that there are accidents in why we have our crossroads. And yes, I have a myriad of backgrounds, but I think you're still moving. I've said other people have a straight line and they're hitting their milestones along the way. My path might have been a bit of a zigzag. And it's not done yet. I don't plan on straightening it out anytime soon. But I was hitting the same milestones. I was just doing it at the pace that I think life was pulling me. And that, so to retrace back to the authentic self and the bedside manner with the paramedics and the reason even for becoming a paramedic, I had to drop what works for everyone else in business. And I had to return to what works for me. And so, yes, I tell stories, and yes, the lab sales rep today heard all about my childhood today, but I heard about hers too, and that to me is the relationship in business. You had said difficult people. Honestly, I think difficult people are just stressed. They're dealing with the problems of their day. Maybe you just don't know until you walk in the shoes of another. And
Sure.
I've had a few stories. I've had a few. I mean, there's a lot in everyone's story, and everyone has a story. And if you just see them as a human and give them the space and grace to be their best version of themselves in that day, and maybe you being just a little bit stronger when they're feeling weak, they can, you can kind of help neutralize each other.
I love that, P. That is a good way to look at things. Now, it sounds like your whole life, you said the helper, the fixer, all that. What, I guess, brought you to environmental contracting and that? I mean, what?
Yeah.
How did you pick that of all things?
Well, I had endeavors to start my own business.
Right.
On the encouragement from my dad, my CPA, Randy Roberts, had always said, he goes, you're in the wrong field. You need to you should be somewhere else. You'll really thrive there. And my father fell ill with cancer.
Okay.
And again, my dad was no saint. I'm no saint, and nobody is. But it was a very significant crossroads where I realized this is what I should be doing. And I think our small town, Waterville, we were introduced. I met my partners. We shared the idea that we wanted to start a business where we took care of each other mutually and simultaneously did excellent work. And no taking from each other, no power grabs, just, mutual respect, authentic self, genuine ability, and good service. And that we were introduced actually through members of the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And they introduced us, we hit it off. One thing that was important is as we have this huddle and we decide, like, what are your goals with this business? Everyone had their individual goals. They were all very good, very meaningful. They asked me, what is your goal? And I said, I absolutely want flexibility. And I need to know that, and this is actually kind of funny. I said, don't touch my chair. And I'm not a fussy person.
Sure.
But the chair was a symbol that in previous jobs where I'd been, your chair would be missing when you got there in the morning.
Okay.
And to me, that was such a sign of disrespect. How am I supposed to work?
Is this in the Army or
It
where?
was in every job. It's an amazing phenomenon. And again, as a facilities person, I protected people's chairs. I was saying, do not touch the chair. You are going to strike a chord with the person.
Okay.
It's amazing how our work environment becomes kind of an extension of our identity. And if you move my office or you take my chair when I'm not there, that is a sign of disrespect. And I think, they say in the workplace to be successful, you need the time, you need to have enough time, you need to have enough information and enough resources to do the job. You deliver that successfully, your team will succeed. Only if and only if you're operating in a culture of respect, if and only if ethics are being upheld.
Right.
And so when that respect, I know it's crazy, it was a chair.
Yeah.
But that was important enough to make it to the partners meeting for me.
Yeah. Wow.
But one caveat to that I found was phenomenally wild is that the day we signed our partnership into existence was the day my father passed away. And it was just a mere coincidence, but every single day. So that was May 22nd, 2016, the day my dad passed. And again, I'm not a perfect person. No one is. But he was my cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
And back in softball, we had number codes for softball, and I struggled to adapt to that. For me, a more natural, more authentic game of softball was my strength. Fitting into a script didn't work so well.
Yeah.
And my dad on the sidelines would he actually asked me, he goes, what number is not used in your number code for your coach? And I said 5, and probably because it's just the open palm. And so he gave me the sign 555 every time I got to bat. And basically what he was telling me was, go do your game.
Do your thing.
Play your game and do your best. You'll shine. You'll find your own way. You might fail too. And then I learned how to laugh through a strikeout. But that didn't make my coach very happy.
I never learned how to do that.
my coach didn't love that very much, but just kind of keeping everything in perspective. And now as a mother, maybe I mentioned it, maybe you may already know this, but my husband and I have 3 children, and we are raising our 2 boys. Our middle son passed away 11 years ago from a heart condition not immediately, but 18 days after birth. It's called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And I need to touch on this story because this isn't the podcast to talk about Eli, but one of the most significant takeaways from experiencing the loss of my son, my husband's son, our child, was the recentering of priorities and saying we live for the heartbeats. That is why at that partners roundtable, I said flexibility, because my kids will come first. And we live for the heartbeats, and that means the people in our lives, the children in our lives, the humans. Like that's if we're not here for each other, why are we here then? I'm pretty sure my car didn't want to just be driven. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a heartbeat. And so when I detached from that connectivity to material objects, to stuff, to success, to reputation, it just became about making relationships and the heartbeats. And I must thank my son for that. I don't know if I would have hit the level of the crossroad that I'm at now had I not had him. But so, retracing my steps back to my story of my dad, having passed on the day I started my business, he would have been my cheerleader. He would have been my go-to. He would have been the guy that I could rant in the kitchen about all those people that make me frustrated in business. And I don't have him. But what I have is a lifetime of stories and lessons he had been trying to impart on me. I have Sergeant Major Hannafin's stories that he had told me, the wisdoms that people... And so every May, sometimes on the correct date, I go back and say, I can't wait to meet myself next year. Because every single year, business is about operating in absolute terrifying realms of what you don't know and what you think everybody else at the boardroom table does know.
Right.
Sorry about that. They don't know either. Sometimes they know. They may know some of it, but if you don't know, just say you don't know. It doesn't really pay to pretend to be the expert in something you're not. And anyway, that was kind of the lesson I got from my dad, because I would, even in Sergeant Major, he gave me a farewell letter of recommendation. And at the end, I'm still pretty grateful. And I use this for reflection, because in business, as the owner of Castle Hill, I had a couple of rough years. Those first few years after Dad was gone, I wasn't sure about everything I was doing. I had questions. I didn't know everything, and I still don't. But I remember asking myself, why am I struggling at this when I excelled in school and I excelled in sports and I excelled in the Army? And I realized my approach was different. And I reread Sergeant Major Hannafin's letter of recommendation. And it said, give her more than you think, this is at the very end, give her more than you think she can handle and get out of her way. And I take such comfort that he had that trust in me. And so I had to believe in myself. I was so used to everyone. And in entrepreneurship, you have to believe in yourself.
I was going to say, how important
you have to find
is
that.
Knowing deep down to you, I know I can do this.
Yes.
How important is that? Is that everything?
It's critical. It's critical, but it's also knowing when you can't, that it's okay. And there's 1,000 people out there. I think it's Grant Cardone who says, do what you know best and outsource the rest. Just don't try to be the expert. And that's something that I've had to learn. And
So is that
humble myself to say, no, you really should use a bookkeeper. You should hire the attorney for that. Don't try to do it all yourself. And that's kind of back to what Sergeant Major told me, what my dad told me, like, be a team player.
So when you were you had this plan maybe to go into business, become an entrepreneur, what qualities did you look for in potential partners? Like when you met your two partners, did you know like immediately, or I guess how did you get to the point where you're like, these are the people, this is the team?
Well, I knew that they had business endeavors that didn't work out for them, and that there was probably some injustices there. And the same as what I had felt like I had experienced in certain employment opportunities, certain places. And I kind of felt like we all wanted to be good to each other, take care of each other, and do good science. And I was awestruck with their professionalism. I was awestruck with their capabilities and their competence. And I knew for a fact that if they could trust me with what I'm good at, I knew I could trust them with what they are good at.
Right.
And that's the harmony I think that we have at Castle Hill, is that I can't possibly have the number of years experience my partners have. I can't have their brilliance and their life experience, but I also can bring my gifts to the table.
Right. So going back to do what you do best, outsource the rest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you do that a lot as a contractor. You can't do it all. And you also have to know when a job is a job worth walking away from, or a job is one that's worth just saying no to, or no thank you to, or we don't have the capacity for, or we apologize, wish we could, and then make 4 referrals. Help them find the person they need. It may not be you. You have to be wise enough to forecast what your capacity is, what your capability is.
How do you step away as a business owner from kind of that ego, like I can do it all, when it comes to, say, a big project or a big contract that deep down you probably can't do it, but gosh, you really want to.
Well,
you really want to try.
How do I? Well, I think I probably just ran afraid from it in the beginning. I probably would have just run. I wouldn't have gone after. I don't have that spirit. I would have played it safe.
Have you always been that way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely the safe. Prepared. I've got the Band-Aids. I've thought of this. I've got extra water. I'm the conservative-minded, safety-oriented, measured and metered step. And business forces you to step out of that comfort zone. And I had the support and encouragement of my partners that we could do this, and then we would map out a strategic plan, and we would collaborate with others. And when I started building relationships with other firms, one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had was with another business owner who admitted he's as scared as I am. And we said, okay, well then we can do this together. We can knock this out. We can fix this problem. And so when you build those relationships with other businesses that will meet you where you are as a human, and you can speak plainly, and you don't have to posture, and you don't have to build any pretense, I think that is when you really find your groove. And those are the partners that you'll bring on every project, you'll work with anywhere, and you'll dive in at the 11th hour, jump on a plane and go save their butt too if their project's going sideways. But I probably wasn't as bold as I could have been, but I've become more bold by building strong teams that we trust, and they trust me and I trust them.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Wow.
So that is that. So yeah, Castle Hill, we're all over the place, and we're really grateful. We couldn't have done this alone. And I feel like I touched on that we were service disabled, but that is a huge advantage.
Well,
I like to point out that we are very blessed that there are such programs, the SBA, the VA, that they do these programs that give the little guy out of Waterville, Ohio, a fighting chance on a federal contract. Our first one was Corpus Christi in Texas, is the Coast Guard facility. And we won that actually full and open. We didn't win that on a set-aside, but many of our projects have been awarded set-asides, and we're really grateful for that.
Can you explain what
that means?
You're talking about?
Oh,
because not everybody knows.
Oh, certainly.
Obviously. So what does it mean to be a service disabled and a woman-owned small business in your industry?
We have to be fully owned. So I'm the majority owner and controlling partner of Castle Hill. And I run everything from payroll to what we order to being on job sites. I'm heading to Virginia next week. So you have to have the majority ownership, but be a qualified service-disabled veteran. And as a service-disabled veteran through the VA, I met those criteria. And we structured our business so that we would be eligible as well. And then the woman-owned, I'm a woman-owned business in the same capacity and same reason. And the federal government, state governments, local governments, even schools, different echelons, all have programs where they create goals for the large businesses to use small businesses like ours. And so my undergraduate actually, because it was such a hodgepodge and I was bouncing through mobilizations in different locations and I was up and down the East Coast, my bachelor's degree ended up being one that was offered in such a remote area as Fort Drum. And it aligns with social services. And I really, this nonprofit management and this vision of making the world better. I really wanted to do that. And what I love about Castle Hill is that we are able to work coast to coast and bring that revenue and hire people from Ohio, bring it all back to Northwest Ohio.
Right.
And help influx our local economy with federal spend dollars, state spend dollars from around the country, and help give opportunity that otherwise may have already been saturated here in Northwest Ohio.
Right. So could you go into a little bit, I guess, how you go about getting that certification and, to have these government set-asides and different projects like that? Could you, I guess, go into what all that allows you to do?
Yeah. Well, on the soccer sideline, I just tell people I do bookkeeping because that's easiest at a soccer game to explain what we do. But since you're asking, I'll tell you, there's much more to it. And if I may reflect on a story, a very, very, very trusted and dear service-disabled veteran-owned business out in Indianapolis named Guidon Design. Luke Lysing, who's the owner of that company, told me one day, we had just had a crisscross with a new business owner, and we asked this business owner what it was going to be. He was a service-disabled business. We said, what do you do? He goes, I don't know yet. And the takeaway there was, I think it came out wrong. It could have been that he just had a choice. He wasn't sure how he wanted to structure his business. But the way it came out was that he was a disabled vet first, and he'd figure out this business thing second. And Luke told me this that day. He goes, never be a service-disabled business or never be a service-disabled veteran that just happens to do business. He said, be a businesswoman who just happens to be a service-disabled veteran. And that's how I approached this set-asides, is that we had to build a strong company. What my socioeconomic or status of any of that was irrelevant if we weren't doing good service.
Right.
So my advice to those who are interested, you may be eligible. There's 1,001 websites where you can learn how, in what ways you're eligible, through the minority business programs, the women business programs, the veteran business programs, at the different levels of locality, state, federal, SBA, private. You can have all of those, and all that is filling out the forms.
Okay.
But none of it matters if you don't have a viable business first.
Right.
And so I would say get great at something. Get great at what you're doing. And I was really, really blessed that my partners already had a wealth of experience in this field, and I already had a wealth of experience in managing projects. So together we were quite harmonious, and we were able to say, we have a good business model.
Right.
We have a good business plan, and we're going to do this. Then we got those certifications, because when you're going through that certification process, they are going to ask you hard questions. And thank God that they are. Because I learned so much through that application process that I didn't have this type of insurance, or I should consider this, or I should have that going on with my bank. And I actually was educated by that process. So for anyone who says it's too hard, or it's out to get you, or it's not easy.
Can they call you?
Oh, I can point them to who they should call, the experts, but absolutely. Actually, I do that pretty frequently. I try to help as many folks as I can. I now work as a subcontractor for a firm also in Indianapolis who we met at Tony Pacco's downtown, and we deconstructed how he should structure his business. He's a service-disabled veteran. He's a Special Forces resident of Indiana, and we spent 3 hours at Tony Pacco's deconstructing how he can and how he should, and he's thriving now, and I'm so happy for them, because just as I would cheer for anyone whose child survived the same condition that my son passed from, the goal is I want everyone to win.
Right.
I want your child to survive. Please tell me your success stories. It gives me hope. I want to see other businesses do well. I need to know that, like, first of all, there's more work out there than any one business can claim. I don't want it all. I can't possibly do it all. But if I build that relationship and help them grow and get strong, then I can lean on them. And we have been supports to each other ever since.
Right.
And yes, he's got a younger business, but he has a very different skill set, different mindset, different approach. He tackles projects that I wouldn't want to, but he also tackles a different sector of professional ability. It's more construction, less consulting. And no, I do love to help the other veterans. I do that as well. But most importantly, if I could coach anyone, it would be get your books straight, keep good records, get organized, set a schedule, whatever it is that takes, whatever you require to be good at your job, to be good at your business, and if you've got that mindset where I'm the owner, I can set my own schedule, then pretend like you're your own boss.
Yeah.
And get busy.
Now, you talked about your dad being your number one cheerleader. How important is having someone who supports you when you are, going into starting a business, running a business? I know you don't have your dad, but do you have, another person who supports you and makes you feel supported? And
well, actually, and I love that you said number one, because he would love to be called number one. He loved to claim number one at everything, and that he got you that job and he got you that, yeah. So
I know the feeling. But I know it well.
in all fairness, I had a whole house full of supporters. I had a whole community full of supporters, and now I'm hopeful and I strive to be that beacon of encouragement and support for everyone, and the children in the school, the kids in the game, whatever opportunity I get to cheer the next person on. I want to pay that forward. But you said, who is out there for me? I would say the voices of the people who have gone, the letters of recommendation, the memories I have with the people who I did work with, and now I would say the other business owners. I have the encouragement from PTAC, which is a organization you can go through in the state of Ohio, where I have done this before. I've gotten memos, I've gotten emails that made no sense to me, that looked like this is going to be a bad day.
Yeah.
I forwarded off. I said, I can't even process this, but I'm going to put it in front of you. If you can help me sort this out, we can get through this. And we did. So in business, you're going to get the letters from agencies, from government agencies, from regulatories that stop you in your tracks, give you that pit in your stomach. You're like, but I was just about to walk into a meeting. How do I do this? So I would say they're my cheerleaders. Encouraging articles on LinkedIn are my cheerleaders. The moms on the sidelines at soccer are my cheerleaders, because in the end, we're all humans. It really doesn't matter what we're spending our day doing. It's where do you draw your strength from? And I'm no quarterback in the NFL, but I would say absolutely God. For me, religion, faith, hope, all of that plays a part. And I know that is a hot button, and people think that it should be muted out of business. Well, gosh darn it, that's why I started my own, so that I can say whatever the heck I want whenever I need to say it, whether it's a good word or a bad word, because trust me, a lot of bad words fly too. But I am grateful to the other business owners. I'm grateful to my partners. They have been my 2 a.m, I'm panicked phone calls. There's just, I think, more good in the world than bad. And they're everywhere. If you ask and you humble yourself to be imperfect and say, I need help, they help you. The bank, the attorneys, the accountants, everybody. I have a wonderful team. I love it.
There you go. So, obviously, you have not, as you said, had a straight A to B path in business.
Certainly.
But would you say that you've learned more from your struggles than what you would have if it just would have been an easy straight line?
Oh, I think so. I absolutely think so. And I'm kind of grateful. So we all have got a story. I've said this.
Yes.
I've got a few Lifetime stories. You know those movies?
Yeah.
I've got a couple of them. And I talk about my son with a smile. I talk about losing my dad with gratitude. Like, I'm not always Pollyanna. You might not know that reference. But if you do, I'm not always Pollyanna. But I try to hold on to that as my grounding so that I can stay positive. Because I heard once, and I'm not sure where, it might have been Jim Carrey, honestly. I think it might have been. It says, what is standing before you that most likely is, I'm gonna ad lib here, absolutely terrifying, makes you want to vomit, has you wanting to quit, run, and bow out, is 100% designed by the divine or by life. I don't know. By your mere existence. It is designed to release what is within you. And the best correlation I can give to that is that piece where I go back every January or every May 22nd, and I say, I can't wait to meet myself next year. Because the things that had me on the ground, the things that had me terrified, things that I didn't understand yet, I will have mastered them 1 year from now. And that will be in my briefcase. That'll be in my toolbox. And I'll have new things that terrify me. And I'll have new problems that I haven't figured out. But hands down, the worst moments in business, the most awful contracts, the ones that go least to plan, cost us the most money, have absolutely taught me the most. And I would say that through those hardships is where you grow. I think they say you must apply heat to steel to forge it. And I think that's where we find our mettle. That's where we find our grit. That's where we find our fortitude. It's where I found perspective. Because I live for the heartbeats. I don't stress over, or I might look like I'm stressed, but in the big picture, I am not stressed over what the day in, day out. My journey is for eternity. My journey is longer than that. And my goal is to be the best version of me each day, to make as many folks as I can join the ranks of positive resilience and incapability. My kiddos said, they used to say, I think they've learned not to say this now, but they say, I can't do that. And I remember saying that to my mom and dad. And they said, says who? Says who? How do you know you can't? Go for it. Try it. They were always encouraging me to do that. And so to my children, I say, yet, you can't do that yet. That's why you're in school. That's why you're learning that.
Yeah.
You also couldn't walk a few years ago. We mastered that.
You can and you will.
Taught you how to hold a fork, and you can climb the steps now, and like all of those things, those milestones, 100% are. It is the next hardest thing for you. That's why it feels impossible, because it's the next thing you're going to conquer. And I think we can apply that to every piece of life, and it's why, I don't know. I think it's what helps us from throwing in the towel every day.
Yeah.
Got to have that hope.
I mean, have you always had this perspective on life, or would you say it is the result of the events and what you've gone through? Yeah,
absolutely the result. I'm not sure. I've told my husband, I'm glad I met you when I did, because I wasn't ready for you yet. When we could have met, actually, we were born in the same hospital. We were born at Toledo Hospital, about 32 hours apart from each other. And I said, as a childhood, as a child going to the same school, as a high school, college, we had numerous opportunities that could have overlapped. I wasn't ready yet. I had a lot of growing to do. I had a lot of changing to do, and a lot of awful things and great things that had to happen first. But no, if there's a tone of encouragement that comes through this, I won't be your expert at business. There's other people that know how to write a contract tighter than I do, but I can certainly keep you focused on what matters, and I can keep you encouraged that you can do it. Your version of what you do might look different than my version of how I would do it, but it doesn't make it wrong.
I love that.
Okay,
Priscilla,
good.
thank you so much
Absolutely.
for being on this podcast.
My pleasure.
I just can't believe your outlook on everything. It is wonderful and refreshing. And I think if more people could kind of stop and take a second and give people grace and space
Yeah.
to be them, maybe things would be a little different.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Well, I certainly I try to maintain that
Mm-hmm.
because for me the alternative is just giving up. You can't. A lot of bad things happen. I can't. I don't have a choice. I'm still in the fight. And you're welcome to cut this part out. I'll jump back in if you want. But I love saying the devil tried. He tried hard yesterday, he's trying hard today, but he lost. Try again tomorrow. I'll bring it. It's okay. I got this.
Yeah.
Because as long as I'm still breathing, I'm still in the fight.
What would you say to people who right now are in the place of, I can't?
Don't do it alone. Get help. Call. Ask. Maybe because I had this attitude, there were 5 different times in the military where someone called me and I know you were asking about business, now I'm talking about life.
Mm-hmm.
5 different incidents where somebody at their breaking point called and said they were done. And 5 different times, I was able to say, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not done. I'm on my way. And I hope that in business, when I say get help, I mean reach out to people who already have it figured out. Connect with business associations. Connect with just someone trusted. Just because somebody might be in a different career field doesn't mean they don't have the wisdom to guide you through, or the support, or that they're not willing to listen. Or maybe they are an hourly employee and they're not an entrepreneur. They don't own their own business, or maybe they're a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't mean they don't understand you as a human and that they don't have something that can correlate and support you through that. Some of the best ideas I get come from the most random sources. And I've inadvertently been the random source of wisdom that somebody didn't expect to get when we were maybe both waiting in line at the grocery store. So I would say hang in there, ask for help, keep trying, keep looking. And when that one person gives you the, I have kind of like a feels better rule. Like if I'm looking for support from somebody and I reach a person who just absolutely crushes me, you're kind of like going to the cemetery on a cloudy day. You're not a feels better situation here. I go to the cemetery on sunny days. I want to make myself feel better. I want this to be a positive encounter. So I just say that's their version of them that day, and I find the next one. And I call the next friend, and I call the next business, or I call the next client.
Will you circle back to the one who maybe wasn't a sunny day ever, or is that?
No, I circle back.
Okay.
Because honestly, they probably just were having a bad day.
Yeah.
Or they couldn't connect through their struggles with the struggle I was asking for help with. They have to have the space to take on my problem. If they don't have room in their rucksack, that's okay. Their rucksack's full. I can't ask them to carry some of my load on a day when they're already full. So I would say just know that you're not alone. You're never alone. And in some of my darkest hours, it was prayer that pulled me through. And I mean that in life as well as business. So we are never alone. Never.
Thank you, Priscilla.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.